continue now with the program. We are the Kalamari Klub. Yesterday we already introduced ourselves a little bit, but for those of you who don't know us, we're going to say a few words about our collective, and then we're going to introduce our new magazine, which you will also find back there to buy for a special festival prize. And we are also giving a few of our contributing artists the chance to talk a little bit about their work. So first up, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit, then give you a little bit of the behind the scenes in making the magazine, and then we're going to give the stage to our contributing artists. And that's also why I would like to ask the 5 artists who are going to present to have a seat here on stage. Yeah, great. Thank you. Hi. And I'm going to hand over the microphone to Nico, who is going to say a few words about Kalamari Klub.
Stay around here, yeah? Okay. Thank you and good morning also from my side, and thanks to Rotlicht for the invitation. As you see, there's 2 seats missing, but Maria's just coming, and if Tobias Becker has entered the room by now, he's also, he told me he was going to be late, so if anyone he sees, yeah. Okay. For those of you who were not here yesterday, I'm just going to give a short overview of who we are and what we do. Kalamari Klub was founded in 2016, and this is one of the first images of our group when we were a collective of 6. We are now a collective of 8 people. And this was in front of our first exhibition. It was also the starting point of our collective because we wanted to have an exhibition. The second one we did was, can you just go back a bit? No, back a bit? Yeah, because I'm just going to go talk a little briefly about it. We are an international collective for the celebration of analog photography, and it consists of artists and photographers and enthusiasts. And we host and produce exhibitions, we have workshops, we run a community darkroom, and we are releasing and publishing magazines, and today our 2nd issue of Maybe. And next one. This is a few installation shots of not our first but our 2nd exhibition in 2016, which was sort of like the first major and recognized exhibition, which also led us to the consequence was that we figured we need to continue this project and we cannot let it die, so we included it here. These are just very classical black and white photography darkroom works that we were showing there at that time. The following year, we were invited to have a screening at at an off space in Heidelberg at Haus am Bärsteg, and you can see a few of the shots. We projected our collective's works together, so they weren't always images from the same person, and there was sort of like a choreography which was going for a while. In 2020, we were actually going to have another show which was going to open in April 2020, and most of you remember that this was the beginning of the pandemic. So we had to postpone that, and we couldn't really work with anything, and we figured we will do a window exhibition which we opened in the fall of 2020. It was open to the public 24/7. You could just go and look at the window shops, and this was at a former hardware department store in Heidelberg. Oh yeah, I forgot to say we're based in Heidelberg, Germany, and all over the world. After we had that Good Morning exhibition, we figured that we wanted to give the stage to other people as well, and we opened up the Good Morning Gallery, which was a temporary gallery in another shop window, which was running for about 8 to 9 months this year as well. We also do workshops. Now you can only barely see it because it's very bright and yet very dark, but most of you will know that this is an image from a darkroom. We teach photography workshops in analog photography to school classes, enthusiasts, photographers who want to try analog, and all people who are interested in our community darkroom. which we open up in 2017. After we had the first few exhibitions, we realized we needed a more professional, more advanced studio and a place where we can be working together as well as a collective. And so we built this into a former, is it called changing room? Yeah, changing room. So this was a changing room, no windows. There's lots of water supply, so that was perfect condition. And it's up and running up until today. And we rent it out for a very generous fee. Yeah. And after we realized that this place was too good to keep it to ourselves, we started a residency program. We've been having 2 residencies so far, the first one 2018 and the second one last year, which is actually our current project, and a collaboration is with a collaborative research center at the University of Heidelberg. It's called IsoQuant. You can see it, maybe see it in the left-hand corner out there. And IsoQuant is a collaborative research center which is focusing on isolated quantum systems and universality in extreme conditions. And I tried really hard to remember that. It's quantum physics. If you want to know more about it, please speak to Dennis, who is our physicist in the collective. Part of the collaboration was a residency, among other things, and also the Maybe magazine, the second issue, was a collaboration with IsoQuant. So unfortunately, they couldn't be here today, people from IsoQuant, but we're really glad that we could do this together. And I think this is probably the point where we'll hand over to Misha again. And he's going to tell you about Maybe magazine in general and also the current issue until we hand it over to the artist. And has Tobias Becker arrived? Hey, Tobias! Perfect timing. Okay. You didn't miss too much.
Okay. Yeah, hi, Tobias. Right. So as Nico already pointed out, we have a collaboration with IsoQuant, who are pretty much the people who funded our second issue of Maybe. And the first issue of Maybe magazine we published in 2019. The idea was, I think, came up a year earlier. We wanted to have a magazine promoting analog photography in all its forms, actually. And we gave it the title Belong, and also asked for applications under this theme. And Maybe we chose Maybe as a name because it pretty much summed up the process of analog photography for us, because you basically never know if the shot you just took comes out great or if it's trash. And in the end, you just see it in the darkroom. And so that's why we chose this as a concept of uncertainty. We had in the first issue 54 contributing artists from all over the world. And our vision was basically to celebrate analog photography and also to connect this international community of photographers using analog photography. And for us, it was amazing, actually. It turned out so nicely because we had so many applications from all over the world. And it really showed us that there are people out there who think alike and who work alike. And So here's some shots of the first magazine, which you will also find back there on the table. Right. Our second issue, which we're releasing today, has a bit of a different approach. And that is because of the collaboration we have with IsoQuant, which is a physicist, quantum physics research collaboration at the University of Heidelberg. And so we took this science approach and put it into our call for participation and asked for analog and experimental photography sort of on the verge or the intersection between arts and science. And we opened this call very broadly, so we had no application fee. We wanted to democratize the process, so to say, in order for many people to contribute. And then we actually got a lot of applications, over 100. And can you just go back? Yeah. And and also that was surprising to us, because we had the feeling that with this narrowing it down to the intersection of art and science, we weren't really sure if people could connect to that. But they did, surprisingly. And yeah, and so we are highlighting photographic works at the interface of art and science. We had over 100 applications from more than 20 different countries. I think it was, yeah, even more than 20. I couldn't really count them all. And we're showing 49 contributing artists in the issue, and it's an offset print of 172 pages, which is really thick. We realized once we got the the magazines, and it's an edition of 500. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the timeline. So I want to give you a short behind the scenes of how we did this. We started pretty much last year in the fall. Our collaboration with Isocorn started, I think, 2 years ago, and in this collaboration we already established sort of a curriculum of what we are going to do within the collaboration, and maybe the second issue of maybe was one part of it. And so we started last year preparing the call for participation, which we published, I think, shortly before Christmas, with a deadline in February 2022. Then in March and April, we got together the jury, which consisted of 5 people of Kalamari Klub and an external art historian. Once we finalized our decision, we communicated this to the artists and asked for the printable data of their works. And then one main task was to sequence the works. Then this year, July, August, we did text editing and sort of drafted the first draft of the magazine along with the graphic designer, who we found in Heidelberg. Then there was a sort of intense moment shortly before printing, where we had to finalize the printable data, and then we printed it, and today we can release it. Yeah, our jury was of 6 people, as I said. Along the way we had regular editorial meetings with our editorial board, consisting of 4 members of Kalamari Klub. Most of it was online and remote, because only 2 of our members are still residing in Heidelberg. And so, yeah, we had to find tools to sort of work remotely. You can see on the right, there's a screenshot of our Miro board, which is an online tool we used for sequencing the works, which was a bit stressful, but also pretty cool that it worked like that. Yeah, along the way we communicated with the artists about the milestones that we reached. And yeah, you can switch to the next. Thank you. Yeah, and then, as I said, the drafting and the design of the magazine, text editing, that was pretty much what we did this summer. And then we had to find printers who could sort of materialize our vision of the magazine and decide on a suitable paper, and then yeah, with our last-minute corrections before printing, we then were left with the decision of how to distribute it, and so we set up an online shop, and yeah, and today we can celebrate the release with you. This is pretty much it, and I'm going to hand over to our first contributing artist, Cosmo Großbach. Thank you for being here.
Hi, so I'm going to show my work, Ute, which is a work I did doing a residency on the island Ute. in Finland, and what I depicted on the photos is what I've been researching for the past years, is the relationship between human and nature and how it interferes and how we're separating each other, etc. And also thinking about what documentary photography is and can be, and how you can extend it within the medium without reaching to other sources. So I was on there and I was photographing on large format film and was then developing the photos directly there and mixing my chemicals with the salt water which surrounded the island, kind of wanting to give agency to the place and interfering how my images will look, which resulted into salt crystals and some mistake being on the negatives. Yeah, and then after I photographed, or while I was photographing there, I was collecting materials from the island. So on the next slide you can see handmade paper I made. So I collected natural and human materials such as glass and bricks, but also then moss that already was falling out, or berries. And yeah, and then in the next step I applied an emulsion to these handmade papers and enlarged my negatives onto them. And yeah, so this is kind of a long thought of how the viewer will interact with the image differently when they can smell the island, feel the island. And yeah, and then what is part of the Maybe magazine is on the next slide. These are experiments I did along the way where I try to not use gelatin so much, but in this case I used potato starch, because if you have handmade paper you need to put something on top of it so the emulsion will even stick and not will just soak in. So yeah, I'm not saying that potato starch doesn't work, but in my case it just turned brown and then it lifted off because it didn't stick enough. And when it dried it looked like this. These are now tiny details from a larger print. They're around 50 by 70. And yeah, so this is just showing the tiny details of a long research. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cosmo. I think next up we have Elizabeth Ransom. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I've got notes because otherwise I will totally forget. So I like this. Okay, interesting. So my name is Elizabeth Ransom. Thank you, by the way, for inviting me. It's such an honor to be here, and it's so nice to meet so many people in person. My name is Elizabeth Ransom, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University for the Creative Arts in the UK. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about soil chromatography today. So if you want to go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about other artists as well that inspire me. So this is Hannah Fletcher, and I learned the process from her a few years back. She's a wonderful artist, and she started the Sustainable Darkroom, which is a phenomenal organization. If anyone is interested, Google her. She's great. They run a whole bunch of workshops, and because she's run these workshops now, soil chromatography has become incredibly popular, and lots of people have started doing it. So this is an image from her series, Circles, A Record of Time, where she's sort of talking about the CO2 levels and the impact that they have on tree rings. So she collected soil from the base of trees and then created these soil chromatography prints. So the next slide. Here's just another image of the soil chromatography prints in an exhibition. Next slide. So another artist I want to share with you is Steffi De Gaetano, who is another phenomenal artist who I've been in contact with, who's using the soil chromatography process. Really exciting work. This is her project Permeance, and this work is sort of talking about Australian colonialism and the impact of cadmium contamination in the River Damel. So she's extracting samples from the riverbed in this river and creating these really beautiful images. And she's also, if you go to the next slide, she combines the soil chromatography print with other alternative photographic processes like cyanotype. So she makes these really gorgeous images. And then lastly, before I move on to my own work, I just wanted to share this work by Serge Moberg, who is also making soil chromatography prints. And these were created from nature conservation parks in Finland. So if you go to the next slide. Yeah, there's lots of really exciting work. So yeah, if you want to go to the next slide. So my project is really about place attachment. I'm an immigrant, and I moved from the UK to America when I was 10 years old, and obviously that had some pretty messed up effects on my identity. But I also get really attached to places, and so place attachment is this theory. It's a cognitive emotional bond to place, and this is one of the places in the UK that I have really deep connection with. And so I wanted to go back and create a record of this place by cataloging the plant life and just sort of retracing my footsteps over the course of a year. This is the process very quickly. I won't go into too much detail, but it's just sort of, you coat the paper in silver nitrate, you extract a solution from the plant material, you obviously have to strain it to make sure it's good to use, and then you use sort of this method to disperse it onto the paper and expose it to light, and you have soil chromatography prints. Another super fun diagram, because I know people love a good diagram. This is how it works. If you want to go to the next slide. So yeah, this is what they kind of look like. And originally this process was used by farmers to sort of decide, you know, like what's in their soil, what they might need to add to their soil. So you can see like the rings. If I was a scientist, I would be able to tell you what this means, but I'm not. So it just looks like a pretty picture. So I'm using it to talk about my own process and my own experience of migration and my connection to this place. So if you want to keep going to the next one. I then started to, because as you can probably see from Hannah, mine, and Steffi's work, they all kind of look quite similar. So I started experimenting with the application of the soil and the silver nitrate to the paper. And so I started like scrunching up the paper and just dipping it directly into the soil solution. I worked with like folding the paper into various different shapes and sizes, and kind of came up with, I'm calling them soil chromatography, but who knows if they actually are. They use silver nitrate, so it counts. So yes, this is one of them if you want to keep going. So this is one where I used a pipette to sort of like drip the soil solution onto the paper. If you want to go to the next one. And yeah, this is one where I folded it. And yeah, so this process has been a really fun process to do. And I go back through every season of the year, so I go in fall, winter, and summer, and retrace my same footsteps, doing the same walk. It got kind of monotonous after a while, but it's a really beautiful walk, so it helps. And just sort of collected soil samples along the way, and people who were walking their dogs definitely thought I was a little bit of a weirdo, but it was fine. And I got this really amazing project out of it, so I think there's probably a few more. Yeah, these are just some more of the experimentations. Yeah, so I think that's probably all I have to say.
Thank you. Who's next? Oh yeah, next is Tobias Becker, who just flew in right on time today.
Hi everyone. I'm very happy there is a microphone because as you can realize I'm very throaty today. But however, I think I can make 5 minutes. Okay, so the questions, my main interest are the questions of how change forms our perception and how progression basically influences our way of seeing. The works basically are a mixture between digital and analog technology, symbolizing basically our physical and digital world, and asking the question of how the digital world influences our everyday life in this physical world. Yep. I always take, for each work, I always take electronical devices which replace an enlarger. So I'm working with analog photography, but I'm mixing it with digital technology, basically. So for example, a smartphone a laser light from a club, or computers, TV screens, and so on. Yep. So this is the first work I did by mixing this technology. So you can see a disco light and 40 meter of 50 centimeter high RC paper. So I placed the RC paper around the walls of a pretty big room, and I invited 40 people to celebrate a small party with me. I closed the doors, and this room became a temporary dark room. And the people moving basically formed shadows on the RC paper, and the disco light basically engraved the people into the photographic paper. So basically this work is an homage to the disco life back then, and also focuses on Mark Fisher's theories of hauntology, who says, Mark Fisher, pretty depressing writing, but pretty nice. He basically says that everything after the disco era is no new music, but is only, or are only, ghosts of the past. So the music repeats itself. Yep. This is a further development. So here the enlarger is a disco light, not a disco light, sorry, a club light, so laser beamer. And this work basically reinterprets our way of remembering things. The brain basically needs a trigger to remember things, and here the trigger is the disco light, and each time the club light, and each time the laser projector turns on, music turns on in the exhibition room, and the club laser aligns with the previously printed form or pattern of the laser light. Yes. So this is the first time I used a personal electronical device as an enlarger. These are basically selfies, which are a mixture between digital and analog photography. The smartphone basically is the camera, and in the moment, so I invited people into the darkroom taking a selfie. And in the moment of them taking a selfie, I placed some analog photo paper on top of the screen. And basically the flash from the smartphone exposed, via the display, exposed the light onto the RC paper, and therefore giving a negative print of the person itself. So this is basically this relies basically on the theory of Wilhelm Flusser, who says that our electronic devices and technology are basically an extension of ourselves, and that with these electronic devices we make culture. So each time a new electronic device comes, new culture or a new form of culture, of visual culture, starts. So, and here this is the question of what happens with our old technology, and if these two technologies, analog and digital, can coexist, basically. Okay. And now we come to the works I show in the magazine. So this is basically a algorithm. The basis for this work is an algorithm. It's called Viola Jones, and this algorithm analyzes your face by face detection, and it uses the so-called HAR features, which the computer tries to align onto your face. So basically an automated Tetris game. And I scanned some people, and these people all had individual HAR features. So basically what happened was that this is basically a digital portrait, and this is the way a computer sees us, basically. So this visual culture only exists like in the computer. It's not made for us to see, but this is actually how artificial intelligence sees us. Yeah, so a shift of views, basically. Yeah, and here you can see me scanning and using an infrared film to show the scanning process of an iPhone and iPad, which use infrared sensors to kind of map the face. And these are the dots you see. Yep. And right now I'm trying to do photography in a three-dimensional way, where I put liquid light photo emulsion onto objects and try to expose them, basically. Yep. I hope you liked the talk and the information. For more information, you may scan the QR codes if you want to. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Tobias. Yeah, I think at the end of the talks we will also have some minutes to for questions if you have some. Next up is Michael Crocker.
Hi, my name's Mike. I'm an English photographer from the UK. The work I've got featured in Maybe magazine is an extract from a long-form project I've shot in Cornwall, which is in the far southwest of the UK. It's called Nance Cook, and it was shot over several months over 2021. So Nance Cook is a landscape documentary project about a small area of remote cliff top right in the southwest of the UK. It's a beautiful and serene natural location with panoramic cliff-top views right out to sea. But despite that, Nance Cook has got a rather sinister and dark, disturbing history. In the 1950s, Nance Cook was used by the British government to manufacture 20 tons of sarin nerve agent. Nance Cook was selected as a location due to its remote position away from large areas of population and its close proximity to the sea for disposal of chemical waste byproducts. So Nance Cook on that slide is the kind of centre right. It's a big empty patch. You can't really see it, but there are actually 3 runways forming a triangle right on the cliff top there. So when visiting Nance Cook, there are many signs of its history if you look carefully. So what we can see there is there's a small concrete plinth right on the edge of the cliff, which was used for a pipe that was going over the cliff into the sea to dispose of chemical waste. So sarin is still considered one of the most deadly and indiscriminate chemical weapons ever produced. By the 1970s, sarin production ended due to kind of changing political opinions on the use of chemical weapons, and by 1980 the site at Nance Cook had been completely flattened. So within the perimeter of Nance Cook, several grave-like pits were dug to dispose of the demolished buildings, while the machinery was thrown down 2 18th century mine shafts that directly connect to the sea below. Today, Nance Cook has been returned to the Royal Air Force, and it is a unstaffed airbase now. It's a radar base covering the southwest approaches to the UK. Nance Cook remains shrouded in relative secrecy though, but you can get into it along the southwest coastal path that runs across the top of the cliff. One of my shoots at Nance Cook coincided with the G7 summit in Cornwall. I was woken up in the middle of the night with low-flying helicopters shaking my tent. So I got up at about 6 a.m. the next morning while I was taking, while I was taking that image, and on one of the runways just to the left of that picture, a kind of temporary structure had appeared, and there were 2 Land Cruisers that spotted me and started driving towards me, which was a bit strange because it's very, very remote and there was nobody there, but for some reason they knew I was there. The rumour is that it was Joe Biden's military escort helicopters being kept behind this barrier on the runway. But I didn't wait to find out, I ran off, basically. So the project documents Nance Cook and its surrounding area as it's found today. The rugged natural beauty of the coast is juxtaposed with a secretive and a sinister past, leaving behind the informed visitor to contest two very different identities of place. It could be said that Nance Cook has a duality of place when considered through a contemporary lens. And finally, I published Nance Cook as a book, and it's on my website along with lots of other images and a Super 8 film that I made as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Mike. Next up, we have Maria Solaguen Beascoa Negre. Hope I pronounced this correctly. Yeah, great.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to come here. I'm very happy. My name is Maria Solaguen Beascoa Negre, and I'm a PhD student in Barcelona, neuroscientist. And well, I started this project with the name of raise awareness of the beauty of the nature of our planet, and I decided to do this project with cyanotype technique. So I started this project around 6 years ago, focusing first of all on our landscape. So these are pictures from the landscape in Japan and how it is and how we have to keep it like that. Following this, I started to gain interest, please, next slide, basically on animals and how they play a crucial role in our planet. And however, I wanted to put focus on, next slide please, on starting to photograph birds, as first of all it's more challenging to try to photograph these birds in their wildlife. So it took me many years to find this type of birds. However, I thought it was very important to explain the importance in our ecosystem, the role they play the birds of prey. Continuously. So then I also challenged myself to take pictures at night of different kind of birds. However, next slide. I started to take pictures of vultures as they have bad reputation, let's say, and to try to demonstrate through artistic photography the beauty and the importance of these kind of birds in our planet. Thanks to these kind of birds, we can avoid many diseases that then human beings will get and will not get so many pandemics. But we have to keep them in balance in our ecosystem, and we are the first responsibles as these kind of animals are dying and disappearing. However, I continued photographing other types of vultures. So this is also very important that when we go and take pictures in wildlife, we have to not disrupt them, we have to accept their environment, and if we cannot take pictures of them, just leave it and leave, and we will try it another day. This is very important for nature photographers. So next slide, please. So then I tried to specialize, my obsession began 5 years ago to try to find the beard vulture. It's an endangered vulture that I tried to go to Greece to photograph them, but they are already extinct there. So I had to work for 5 years to try and find them around the Spanish Pyrenees. And finally, the last year, I was able to photograph them. So I started collaborating with an NGO that protects these species from human being distractions, let's say, as we are killing them, and they're really important to the balance of our ecosystem. So here you can see these pictures of this beard vulture. So you can. Also, it was very interesting through these projects to learn so much about them and being able, for example, in this picture to photograph the different ages of the beard vulture in one picture. So it was kind of a really magic moment, and seeing like a family and seeing that actually with these NGOs and if we keep on going these beautiful projects, we can really see these beautiful images, and we can see how we can keep the wildlife awake. So next slide. So yeah, so these are the pictures. Also, I decided to, in this project, to work with Cyanotype because I thought it was the perfect way to finish this project using the sunlight, so using nature to explain a project that is about nature. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maria, and thank you so much for all the artists up on stage. We actually do have some time left, so I would open the floor for questions to us as a collective or to the individual artists. Does anybody have a question they would like to ask? Okay, I don't see any now. Maybe I can ask you how you felt that you and with your works could connect to the open call that we had asking for this intersection between arts and science. Who'd like to say something to this?
Yeah, it was a really great open call, so thank you for doing it. I think either Nico or somebody contacted me and said, hey, you should apply for this, and I was really excited about that. And I guess the process that I'm using it used to be used by farmers, and it is a scientific process, but I'd never really considered it in that way, because obviously I've used it for fine art context. So to be able to sort of rethink about the work in a more collaborative with the sciences, I think was quite interesting. So yeah, it was really exciting for me to be able to be a part of it, so thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, it kind of just felt like my work fit into the context, and it felt nice to see my work alongside with other people who are also doing very research, where they also try to maybe figure out new ways on how to do things, which is for me a lot what science does.
Well, for me, I think my my project resonated with the open call because it's about the scientific development of sarin within the landscape. That's what the pictures were about. So yeah, I thought it was a good match.
Okay, so my project, I always, as a scientist, I always explain anything that related to photography through scientific papers, and also I explain always the numbers, the data of the beard vulture through scientific papers. So I think it's the best way to realize what is going on in our nature with data. So that's why I thought it was really good idea to mix these two, photography and science.
Yeah, I think for me it's the process itself. Basically, kind of to install a setting like a scientist and trying and failing and trying again and then someday succeeding. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, for us, this was also something that we enjoyed seeing when the applications came in, that there are so many different ways to connect to this, this approach that we had to science and art through the process, through the form of showing the works or the research interest that lies in the projects itself. And so this was for us really cool to see that so many people could relate. Yeah. Does anybody have a question now, maybe? Yeah, there's a question.
Hi, the question actually first to Maria. What will be the project going on to next level? Is if there is any next level in your project? Yeah, so you're going to keep taking picture, or is there any idea upcoming with this related with this project, is exactly it could apply to other artists.
All right. Did you get that? Like, okay. Okay, first Maria.
Thank you. Well, yes, of course, I want to keep on going, taking pictures. Now I'm trying to go for different type of birds, more complicated. Let's see if I can manage. Also, as the experimental part, I'm starting to work with different supports and trying to, ongoing project, trying to work with kind of the same pictures, but trying to give them with different supports a 3D dimension with cyanotype, and let's see how this works. So I want to give like the feeling that you're seeing the birds flying while you're watching the image, not just like the whole image in one support. So I'm trying to work with this 3D project. Let's see if it works.
Yeah, as you could see on the last slide, I'm basically always moving between film and photography, analog film, and I think the next photo project will be an intersection between film and photography again. It relies on a book called The Discovery of Slowness, and there it's about a discoverer who discovers the Northwest Passage and through his slowness, basically, so by accident. And the photo series basically asks the question: what happens if we lose our slowness and only move speedy ways fastward? Yep.
Well, for me, the Nance Kook project is all wrapped up now. It's finished. I've got a couple of other things going on in the background, but for the time being, I'm keeping them under wraps.
Within the Utter project, I'm still experimenting with the paper and how I can use other things. I've also done on the island cyanotypes with the objects, and the latest thing I did is enlarging just the silver crystals which are left from the developing on the film. So yeah, that's still ongoing. They're just very tiny, but they look really beautiful. So that's the next step I want to do with the project.
My soil chromatography project called The Woods is pretty much done. I'm just sort of figuring out how to exhibit it for my final Viva, which is in a couple years, so I've got some time. In the meantime, I'm working on a film suit project where I've worked with 10 migrant women, and we're talking about sort of concepts of homesickness. And each of them gave me a liquid, like a drink or a soup or something that like reminds them of home when they're feeling really homesick. And I took a roll of 35mm film and soaked it in that liquid for 1 hour for every day it had been since they had returned home. And I didn't really think this process through because a lot of people had been gone for many years. And so I had like chicken broth sitting on my counter for months on end. And it grew really gross things and stunk really bad. But the images look really cool, so totally worth it. So I'm sort of finishing off that project as well.
Yeah, we're gonna look. We're looking forward to seeing more of your works. Okay, I was just given the sign that we have to wrap up. I know that we have a few of the other contributing artists sitting here in the audience, and we would like to ask you up on stage to join us, maybe for a quick photo for us, and then you will also receive your artist copy of the magazine. So yeah, I'm not sure I know all of you, but if you just would come up, that'd be great.
Just a quick ending note from my side. Thank you all for your contributions, and thank you all for your contributions. It's really great to see that so many of you came to the Rotlicht Festival. Luckily, unfortunately, the projection wasn't in the best light for most of the images, but you have the analog versions here. And for those people who are joining us online, also shout out to the artists who are joining online. You can order it from our web shop. Yeah, and then there's one last slide. And also, I'm going to give one now to Dennis and myself because we're also featured, which is... oh, I'm giving it to Micha so he can give... Did you all get one yet? Yes. Ha, perfect. All right. So we have to get it be in the picture. Okay, that's a bit awkward, but we can do awkward. Yeah. Right? It's good to see so many cameras out there as well. Okay, thank you very much for coming, and have a look at the magazine, buy the magazine, and no.
And as we said, it's a special prize for the magazines today.
Thank you guys so much for this great introduction of Maybe and Club Kalamari. Take the last copies. We're gonna take now a little stage time, let's say 5 minutes, and then we're gonna represent our partner festivals. Few of them arrived already here. One of them it's online per Zoom, so we need just like a few minutes to set it up. Thanks a lot.